Hi. The topic of chapter 6 is fallacies. What is a fallacy? A fallacy is a mistaken reasoning to draw a conclusion from weak and irrelevant evidences. A fallacy occurs when someone tries to persuade you with insufficient evidences and grounds. It's a fact of life that the people, we do make errors in reasoning. That is, we try to argue for something on the basis of insufficient evidences. Sometimes people commit fallacies intentionally. They recognize that they don't have sufficient evidences to back up a claim, but nonetheless they try to persuade you. They want you to accept a certain conclusion. So they intentionally commit fallacies. But most of the time, people commit fallacies non-intentionally, without knowing that they are committing a fallacy. But whether it's intentionally or unintentionally, we have to try to avoid making fallacies. And some fallacies are quite common. Logicians have studied these errors, logical errors that people make, and they have found out that some logical errors, mistakes in reasoning and thinking, are so pervasive that they have named certain fallacies. So we have a long list of fallacies explained and described in this chapter. And there are more detailed explanations and descriptions in the book. So I will just go very briefly on each fallacy. The first one is called subjectivism. It has this, the general form of subjectivism is this: I believe that P, therefore P is true. Now this is a fallacy because just because someone believes that P, it does not follow that P is true. And we know that there are cases of false beliefs. Okay? Like for example, many people few hundred years ago believed that the earth is flat, or the sun moves around the earth. Okay? And we know that these beliefs are false. So that means just because you believe that P, it doesn't necessarily follow that P is true. And someone argues that P is true because he or she believes that P, then that person is committing the fallacy of subjectivism. Okay? Next fallacy is appeal to majority. It goes like this: many people believe that P, therefore P is true. Appeal to majority can make a powerful psychological effect. That is, even though we know that just because many people believe that P, it doesn't necessarily follow that P is true. When we hear that, this argument, we tend to accept that P is true. Psychologically, the fact that many people believe that P has a very powerful influence on us. Okay? For example, peer pressure. Okay? You don't want have a belief that is so different from everybody else around you. So we tend to believe what most people around us believe. But that's a fallacy, okay? Appeal to majority. Just because many people believe that P, it doesn't necessarily follow that P is true, okay? And whether this argument is good or bad depends on who these many people are, okay? And until we know that who these people are, argument of this form is not valid. Okay? Appeal to emotion. When you try to persuade someone of a conclusion, not by presenting evidences, okay? Not by presenting evidences that show that the conclusion is true, but by causing emotions such as pity, fear, guilt, or any other emotions. For example, S should not be sentenced to a jail term because if S goes to jail, S children will be in trouble. The defense lawyer of S may argue like this to persuade jurors that S should not be sentenced to a jail term. But whether S should be or should not be sentenced to a jail term depends on what S did. Okay? Whether S did commit the crime that he or she is charged with. That's what is relevant. Whether if S goes to jail and S children will be in trouble. I mean, that's sad, but nonetheless, it's not relevant for the case. Okay? And when the defense lawyer tried to persuade the jurors of a conclusion by presenting something that is irrelevant to the conclusion, then it's a fallacy, and specifically it's called appeal to emotion. Appeal to force, trying to threat physically or psychologically someone to accept a proposition. Okay? For example, you should stop believing that. If you keep believing it, we will not be friends anymore. Okay? So this is kind of a psychological threat. When not having a friend is considered as something bad, then this can be a threat to someone. Okay? So this is not a proper way to persuade someone to stop believing something. It's a fallacy. Appeal to authority. Appeal to appropriate authority is not a fallacy. Okay? We do this all the time. Okay? We ask the appropriate experts, seek for their opinions when we try to make up our own minds. Okay? But a fallacy occurs when you appeal to wrong or inappropriate authority. For example, the gun law must be passed because a famous movie star endorses it. The fact that a famous movie star endorses something may have certain psychological effect on us. Okay? Kind of psychologically move us toward a certain, or be favorable to a certain conclusion, but nonetheless, we must be careful not to judge something based on psychological feeling. Okay? We have to judge a case solely on the basis of evidences. This is fallacy, and I'm not suggesting that a movie star cannot be an appropriate authority on guns and laws. A movie star can be. Okay? The point is that a movie star is not an appropriate authority on gun control just because he or she is a famous movie star. Okay? Just because the person is a famous movie star doesn't make the person qualified to have a good opinion about gun control. Okay? This is appeal to authority. Ad hominem, it's a famous fallacy. When it occurs when someone attacks an argument by attacking the person who made it. P must be false because S claims it. Maybe S, the person may have a dubious record, but we should evaluate a person's claim by evaluating the grounds or evidence presented to support it. Okay? Even though S may have dubious record, that in itself should not be the ground to devaluate an argument. Okay? So ad hominem is a fallacy that occurs quite so often. Okay? There are many examples of ad hominem and other fallacies in the book. For example, these are all kind of species of ad hominem fallacies. How can you tell me I should stop smoking when you still smoke yourself? This is ad hominem. Okay? Try to respond to an argument. Try to respond to an argument by pointing at the person who makes it. Okay? Now, the person who makes the claim, okay, that I should stop smoking, okay, the person may be a smoker, okay, but the fact that the person is smoker does not automatically disqualifies his claim that I should stop smoking. Okay, his claim might as well be true, based on proper evidence. Okay? So just because the person who presents the argument or makes the claim is such and such, that should not be automatically taken as ground to disqualify the person's argument. Okay? The argument should be evaluated according to its own credentials. Okay? We have to ask whether the argument is valid. Okay? Does the conclusion validity follow from the premises? These are the kind of questions that we have to ask. Poisoning the well. This is an interesting name. You are supporting Julie for the class president because she's your friend. This makes it very difficult for you to defend Julie, okay? Support Julie. Okay? Yes, Julie is your friend. That may be true, but that doesn't make your support for the Julie for the class president invalid. You may have a very good reasons to support Julie. So just the fact that she happens to be your friend doesn't make your action invalid or wrong. Okay? When someone charges you of that, then that person is committing a species of ad hominem fallacy. I mean, you have to tell the person, hey, you are making an ad hominem fallacy. Okay? It's called poisoning the well. So even if that's true, that is, Julie is your friend, there may be good reasons to support Julie. And all you want is my support for Julie should be evaluated according to how good these reasons are, not by the fact that I happen to be, Julie's friend. Okay. All right. So these are the examples of ad hominem, okay, fallacy. Trying to attack an argument not by looking at the argument and its structure, but by looking at the person who makes the argument. Okay? Ad hominem fallacy has that characteristic. Okay? False alternative, failing to consider all relevant alternatives. For example, if you are not with us, you are against us. Probably this person is trying to persuade you that you should be with the person. Okay? But this is an argument based on false alternative, because you are with us or against us are not the only alternatives. There may be third alternative, which has not been mentioned here. Okay? That is, one may just remain neutral, okay? Not against us, nor with us, but just to remain neutral. Okay? That's a possible option, which has not been considered here. In making this claim, the person talks as if with us or against us are the only alternatives there are, okay? And which isn't the case. So it's a fallacy called false alternatives. Failing to consider all relevant alternatives. Post hoc. This fallacy has the form A occurred before B, therefore A caused B. This fallacy is based on the following mistake, that causal relationship, that is A caused B, requires only that A occurred before B. Okay? But the fact that A occurred before B, although that's necessary, is not sufficient. Is not sufficient for A causing B. Okay? In other words, not everything that occurred before B is a cause of B. Okay? Some events that occurred before another event, well, that doesn't necessarily mean that this antecedent event caused that event. Okay? The fallacy occurs when one takes a merely temporarily antecedent event as a cause. Okay? That's post hoc. Okay? Hasty generalization occurs when someone draws a conclusion on the basis of insufficient evidence. Only a few instances. For example, the tour guides were so kind. Like suppose you went to a country, okay, foreign country, for sightseeing, and you stay there for several days, and the tour guides that you met were all so kind. And you come back and report to your friends that, therefore, people in that country are kind. Well, these are, okay, a few instances, are too small number to make a conclusion about the people in that country in general. Okay? It's too hasty. Okay? We make a generalization all the time, but this is too hasty. Okay? There need to be a sufficient number of instances before we generalize to whole population. Okay? This is too small a number. Okay? composition and division. These two fallacies go in the opposite direction. Composition, the fallacy of composition occurs when you infer from parts to the whole. Okay? For example, from the premise that every part of the car is cheap, you try to draw a conclusion about the whole, like the car is cheap. Okay? That's a fallacy. That doesn't follow. Okay? Just because every part of the car is cheap, that doesn't mean that the whole car is cheap. Okay? The whole car may as well be very expensive. Okay? Division goes the opposite direction. From when you move from the whole to parts. For example, the apple, the whole is red. Thus, all atoms that make up the apple are red. That's not true. Okay? An atom is too small to see. Okay? So just because the whole has a certain property, it doesn't follow that the parts that make up the whole must inherit the same property. That's not true. And when someone infer a reason like that, the person is making the fallacy of division. Okay? So composition and divisions are a pair going the opposite direction. Begging the question is another very familiar type of error. It occurs when you assume C in the process of proving C. This is just an example. For example, someone tries to prove that God exists. That's the conclusion that you try to prove. And other people ask, why is that? God exists. Why is that? You say, Bible says God exists. And your friend asks again, what Bible says true? And you say, Bible is truthworthy. Okay? What it says is true. Your friend asks again, why is that? Why is it the case that what the Bible says is true? And you say, well, Bible is the words of God. What the Bible says is true because Bible is the words of God. Now what that means is that God exists and God gave those words. Okay? So in trying to prove that God exists, you assume that God exists. Okay? That's called begging the question. Okay? There are many other, I think, better proofs of God's existence than this. This is begging the question, but there are other arguments for the existence of God that is a lot better than this. Complex question is classified as a kind of begging the question in the book. Complex question, an example of that is like, have you stopped beating your wife? This question presupposes that you have been beating your wife. So either way, I mean, have you stopped beating your wife? If you say either yes or no, you are kind of admitting that you have been beating your wife, and you may question that. Okay. So this is a kind of begging the question. The person presupposes something that has not been proved. Okay? So complex question is a type of begging the question. equivocation. There are many words in ordinary language have more than one meaning. Okay? And the fallacy of equivocation occurs when one and the same word changes its meaning in the middle of one argument. That's when the fallacy of equivocation occurs. For example, everyone is a sinner. Those who sin must go to jail. Therefore, everyone should go to jail. In this argument, there is a word that has two meanings. Can you recognize what that word is? The word sin, okay? In the first sentence, sinner here means has religious meaning. Okay? Everyone is a sinner. That may be so according to a certain religion. Okay? But in the second sentence, those who sin must go to jail. In this case, sin means a criminal. Okay? Those who make the crime, okay, must go to jail. So this is kind of religious meaning, and this is legal meaning. And sin, the word sin, may mean either one of those two things. But in a single argument, one and the same word should keep the same meaning. And that is violated in this argument. Okay? Equivocation. Appeal to ignorance. Just because nobody has proved that P is true, it does not follow that P is false. Okay? For example, P might be an example of, say, E.T., okay, alien, intelligent being other than us. Okay? And nobody has so far proved that there are alien creatures other than us. It does not follow that there isn't. Okay? It is just that we have not yet gathered any evidence, positive evidence for its existence, but it doesn't follow that. Okay? The lack of positive evidence doesn't mean negative evidence against it. Okay? So when someone tries to argue this way, it's the person is appealing to ignorance. Okay? Diversion. We are almost done. Diversion is changing the issue in the middle of an argument. This fallacy may occur intentionally. One may intentionally change the issue so that the conclusion may seem more plausible than it actually is. Diversion is also called a red herring. A species of diversion is a straw man. Attack someone's conclusion by attacking an oversimplified version of it. Okay? When you see this person's conclusion is very strong, but you try to attack the person's argument not by attacking that conclusion, but oversimplified caricature version of the person's conclusion, so that you become more successful in your effort, but you are making a fallacy, okay, called diversion. Okay. Okay, that is the last thing actually. Wow. Study guide should be there are so many examples of fallacies. focus on the definition of fallacies given in the summary boxes at the end of each section. Okay? In the textbook, the author gives very detailed explanations, provides many examples of each fallacy, but in addition, the author also provides a summary, a concise summary of all the fallacies discussed. You can see the summary at the end of each section, and that is very useful. Okay? It is when you study fallacies, it is also useful to remember a typical example of each fallacy. Make use of the examples provided in the book. Okay? So when I say appeal to authority, okay? Try to see what the authority is by an example. Okay? So for each fallacy, try to remember a typical example of that. Right? That is very useful way to understand the fallacy. After you study fallacies, do the practice quizzes and all that, but read Love is Fallacy. This is a kind of short story. I will post it in the course website. It's a very fun piece to read. And I recommend you to read it. Okay, so that's it for fallacies.